September 11th, thousands of people killed. The world stunned by massive violence. I'm talking about the bloody, tragic events of September 11th, 1973 in Chile. The CIA and the whole apparatus of Wall Street's military-industrial complex overthrew the democratically elected president Salvador Allende and his popular unity government. In David Rockefeller's memoirs, the real Dr. Evil bragged about urging his employee, Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, to get rid of Allende. The guerrilla General Pinochet crushed Chile's working class and poor. The famous folk singer Victor Jara was tortured to death. Thousands of others were jailed and tortured as well, including our dear friend and comrade Victor Toro, who continues to fight in the South Bronx. Behind Pinochet and his torturers were the Chicago Boys, economists from the University of Chicago, who privatized Chile's pension system. Wall Street hedge funds want to privatize Social Security today in the United States. That's the same playbook that the Rockefellers and Trump administration want to carry out against Venezuela's 30 million people. The Pentagon and CIA want to overthrow democratically elected President Nicolas Maduro and crush the Bolivarian Revolution. Poor and working people in Venezuela will not let this happen. They have mobilized their millions and declared, no pasarán, they shall not pass. This week's issue of Workers' World newspaper has numerous articles about what's really happening in Venezuela. I urge you to share this truth with your fellow workers and neighbors. Give them a copy. Rich people in the U.S. and Venezuela can't stand the fact that President Maduro was a bus driver and leader of the bus drivers union in Caracas. These parasites find it intolerable that a worker is president of Venezuela. In 2005, Megabucks Mayor Bloomberg called bus operators and other striking transit workers in New York City to be thugs. Billionaire Bloomberg and his media empire want to kick out President Maduro just like President Allende was murdered. The real thugs are the renta mobs on the streets that stabbed and burned to death the 21-year-old black man Orlando Jose Figueroa in a wealthy Caracas neighborhood. Just the fact that he was black caused the mob to suspect him of being a Chavista, that is, a supporter of the Bolivarian Revolution, and they lynched him. That's reminiscent of the not-so-old South and the North as well, where an African-American who wandered into a white neighborhood could be killed. Like Sandra Bland or Eric Gardner or Deborah Danner, who were killed by racist police, we say his name, Orlando Jose Figueroa. What an insult to the memory of the liberator, Simón Bolívar, who, like the late President Hugo Chavez, was proud of his African ancestry. The rich people's media in Venezuela constantly referred to Chavez as a monkey. It was Haitian President Alexander Pétion that gave ships and supplies to Bolívar, who used them to free millions from Spanish colonial rule. Another mob of the privileged set fire to the Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias Maternal and Children's Hospital on April 20th. The 54 children inside were fortunately evacuated, no thanks to the terrorists who set it ablaze. Can anyone believe that these murderers are fighting for democracy, the rule of the many, who produce everything for society? The International Action Center have called a week of actions and meetings in solidarity with poor people in Venezuela defending their Bolivarian revolution. Here in New York, we went to Times Square on Tuesday. People in New York and Los Angeles are demonstrating this afternoon. Comrades in Atlanta went to the headquarters of CNN to expose the media lies about Venezuela. People demonstrated in Durham, North Carolina. We courageously faced off Contra elements in Oakland, and so did our friends in Vancouver, Canada. You can read accounts of these activities in the latest issue of Workers' World. Cuban President Raul Castro spoke the truth about what's really happening in Venezuela. He said it is necessary to denounce and stop the aggression against this sister country. Imperialist economic and political interests are attempting to deny its people the right to exercise self-determination. Joining the unilateral, arbitrary, and unjust sanctions of the United States are intervention in internal affairs by the Organization of American States, the OAS. Shea called it the Yankee Ministry of Colonies, and various governments, as well as the defamation and crude manipulation of reality. all directed towards overthrowing the constitutional government elected by Venezuelans. Said Raul, many of those leading protests and seeking international recognition are the same individuals who were involved in the 2002 military coup, in the oil sabotage of 2003, and in the violent seditious actions of 2014. 43 people were killed in the 2014 violence. Among them was the 29-year-old motorcyclist, Elvis Duran de la Rosa, who was partially beheaded by barbed wire strung across a highway by Venezuelan Contras. Behind the counter-revolutionaries in Caracas isn't just Venezuelan millionaires and even billionaires. It's the ruling class of the United States that's calling the shots. The Cuban newspaper Granma pointed out that over 40 years ago, CIA coup expert Gene Sharp said there are 198 methods to overthrow governments that Washington doesn't like. These methods were used in the CIA Operation Success to overthrow Jacobo Arbenz, democratically elected President Jacobo Arbenz in 1954. Arbenz dared to give unused land belonging to United Fruit to landless peasants. According to President Bill Clinton, at least 200,000 people were killed by the subsequent military regimes in Guatemala. The CIA conspirators E. Howard Hunt and David Etley Phillips, who did United Fruit's dirty work in Guatemala, later helped carry out regime change in Dallas, Texas on November 22, 1963. Decades later, the CIA wants to carry out the same dirty work with the same 198 dirty methods in Venezuela. The Rockefellers consider oil-rich Venezuela to be a personal province that was taken from them by the masses. Nelson Rockefeller owned a 112,000-acre ranch. That's 175 square miles, more than half the area of New York City and the Orinoco Basin. The butcher of the Attica prison uprising owned other estates as well as a supermarket chain there. More importantly, his family owned most of the country's oil through control of Standard Oil in New Jersey, later rebranded as Exxon. Meanwhile, millions of Venezuelan people lived in dire poverty. Workers rebelled in 1989 against cutbacks imposed by the International Monetary Fund. 3,000 people were shot down during the Caracazo Rebellion. Hugo Chavez and the people put a stop to this. Chavez was elected president in 1999, and the Bolivarian Revolution began. Chavez told ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson and the Rockefellers to get the hell out of Venezuela. Tillerson is now Trump's Secretary of State. Ominously, the Pentagon is right now carrying out military exercises in the Caribbean. The Pentagon's top military officer for Latinx America, Admiral Kurt Tidd, told the Senate Armed Services Committee that the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela could eventually compel a regional response, means sends in the Marines. This brass hat could care less that Orlando Jose Figueroa was burned to death or that Elvis Duran had his head cut off by Contras. Admiral Tidd's job is to return Venezuela to the status of a U.S. neo-colony. Workers in Venezuela will stop him, and we must do everything we can to stop any form of intervention against Venezuela. That includes the lies of the capitalist media. When Nelson Rockefeller had the prisoners at Attica shot down, he spread the lies. He spread the lie that the guards were killed by the inmates. That wasn't true. Matt Taibbi in the ever-so-liberal Rolling Stone called democratically elected President Nicolas Maduro a dictator. That's a big lie that can be used to justify military intervention by Admiral Tidd. Nobody chooses their parents, but within capitalist society, which includes most reporters, honest ones can be fired, driven to suicide like Gary Webb, or even sent to death row like Mumia Abu-Jamal. And an apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Matt Taibbi's father, Mike Taibbi, played a big role in covering up the gang rape of black teenager Tawana Brawley 30 years ago this fall. Today, this brave woman has had her wages garnished because she told the truth, and her courageous attorney, Alton Maddox, has been forbidden to practice law. We say to hell with the Rolling Stone, read Workers' Roll newspaper, U.S. hands off Venezuela, long live the Bolivarian Revolution.